Hello there, I'm Ari Lynette, and I've got some explaining to do. So this is a video I feel like I've needed to make to clear up my feelings on this whole situation, especially because there's been this whirlwind of drama going on right now. But whatever the reasons are, it doesn't really matter that much, because this video is just something I felt like I needed to put out. So, recap time. Around a year ago, I put out a video titled #NotMySister. This was a response to the conflama going on with James Charles and Tati Westbrook. So in that video, I talked about the scandal from the perspective of being a queer person, which, surprise surprise, I still am, and me seeing a major member of the community embroiled in such a scandal and the implications of that, etc, etc. And yeah, I did not like some of the things I said in that video. A lot of the things I said in that video weren't necessarily original things, like comparing James Charles to a predator, to Harvey Weinstein, to basically calling him a shame on the whole LGBT community. Yeah, that was pretty horrible and pretty unwarranted. It doesn't matter that those weren't original thoughts. The fact is, I was happy to list those as reasons to demonize someone. I put myself in a situation that absolutely nobody asked for and made myself essentially part of an attack movement. And not a good one that aims for positive change and progress, but one that goes out of its way to end someone's career because a rich white lady's feelings were hurt. I'm not going to take on the video itself. I've thought about it, but I eventually decided not to. The reason is that I think my feed of videos should represent my thoughts and my feelings at that time, and it should show evolution and change. Because, you know, people evolve and change, and I felt like my feed should reflect that. I also think that in a world, especially nowadays, when media is deemed to be bad and problematic, and there's discourse around that, for me to take down that video would be acting like it didn't happen. It would be sweeping it under the rug, and the fact is, it did happen, I did say those things, and no amount of deflection or removal or like even editing can really take that away. And no, I don't regret making the video because I feel like it kind of serves as a lesson that even little social justice worry in me can be affected by a bandwagon. Even if I think I'm above that stuff, like, no, there's the evidence. You can be affected by a bandwagon too. But I regret enough things said in that video to make this one. So, let's get to the point. I am sorry. I'm sorry for contributing to a dangerous narrative and willfully vilifying a member of my own community on bad faith terms. The critiques I made were not of a solid foundation and were based on a biased account, and I should have known better than to do that. I don't believe that James Charles is a predator, and me saying that is and was pretty despicable of me. With the whole situation, particularly with the drama nowadays that's come up, the third installment, so to speak, that got me thinking a lot about how I reacted a year ago and how things have changed in my perspective. So consider this video somewhat of a penance run. I want to try and analyse a couple of things. First of all, why did people jump so quickly on the James Charles hate train? And by people, yeah, I'm going to be referring to me as well. At times I am people. This is an internal study as well as an external one, so that's going to be exciting. We're going to dive into a pool of cringe culture, internalized homophobia, and yeah, we're even going to touch that thing that I've been trying not to touch for the longest time, cancel culture. Yeah, the most terrifying subject of all. So hop on in, fasten your seatbelts, pull down your over-the-shoulder restraints, or whatever you sat in right now, and prepare for a video that may change your life. But it probably won't.
Like me, LA, you can get a taste. Miami, you can get a taste.
Right, just to preface this section of the video, there are absolutely valid reasons to hate James Charles, and I'm not saying that anyone with even a sprinkle of disdain for this man is somehow a monster. Yeah, whether it's him faking the yearbook stunt that got him famous, tweeting about Ebola, or doing an incredibly insensitive mugshot challenge, those are valid reasons to dislike someone, even valid reasons to want to stop supporting someone. I think the one that put the most fuel into this particular fire was the Sisters tour. This overpriced and unclear vanity tour that people were really shaking their heads at. And it only boosted this idea in people's heads that James Charles had a bit of an ego. Either way, there are valid reasons. However, there are also some pretty shallow reasons that would not hold up in court. Yes, he wears some questionable things to music festivals. Yes, calling everyone a sister can get quite tiring quite quickly. Yes, he sings a lot and he's no Celine Dion, to put it lightly. Those are reasons to not like a person, but none of these justify the level of vitriol that was flung at James Charles. Now, and particularly during that time, which I like to call Sistergeddon. I think it's a cool name. None of this stuff is problematic. What we call it is cringe. Cringe culture is a term that I've only recently become familiar with, but I'm assuming when I say that you'll have a faint idea of what it means. In short, cringe culture is the phenomena of people responding to other people committing the cardinal sin of cringy content on the internet. And the truth is, it's very easy to look down on someone for doing something cringy. We look down on kids doing their TikTok dances and we're like, oh, well, at least we're not as bad as that. And it's very easy to get carried away with that. Even if you had fun, lighthearted intentions, it can get big quickly. It's very easy to vilify people online, especially teenagers and kids, for doing cringy things in their youth, when we probably all did cringy things in our youth too. Some of it online, some of it in real life. Either way, we probably all did cringy things. However, cringe culture has really brought in this idea that poking fun at cringy content is really free reign, and James Charles absolutely fits into that box with the singing and the strange Coachella outfits and the wanting to cut in line at DragCon to meet Latrice Royale, because what do you know, he's James Charles. And because he has such a prominent place in the beauty community, if not one of the prominent places in the beauty community, that makes him a prime target for this kind of cringe culture backlash. Actually, wait a minute, no. It makes him the prime target for cringe culture backlash, probably the biggest on beauty YouTube. But James Charles isn't just a victim of cringe culture gone wild, he's also a victim of internalized homophobia from many peoples. It's me. I'm many peoples. Yeah, that's right kids, I had internalized homophobia. Wow, ain't that crisp. So I recently had an epiphany that my main disdain for James Charles in the past might have actually more derived from his more stereotypical image. He's the typical beauty boy, so 90-pound twink with short back insides and an Adidas tracksuit. He's flamboyant, rather effeminate, and he has a bit of a thing for guys he can't have. And I thought I was above that. I'm not like these superficial gays, I thought to myself, despite the fact that thinking that is quite a superficial thing, if you think about it. I would never lust over a straight guy, I say to myself, despite the fact that that was literally my last year of college summed up in a sentence. Don't ask. The whole idea of being above this whole concept of the stereotypical beauty boy really clouded my judgment. And when I look at the situation now, I see it very differently. This was a confident and talented influencer who knew his worth, and yes, he might have gone about it in the wrong ways at times, and he might have let his ego get to him a little bit. I'm not going to deny that. But he is hugely influential, and it would be pretty asinine to say that he didn't have this massive impact on diversity in the beauty community, because the fact is, he did. People like me probably wouldn't really be doing beauty content if it wasn't for people like him. And if you look at that in writing, is there really any real reason to tear someone down for that? Unless this person happened to be a real danger to society or an absolute racist monster. And James Charles, I believe, is neither of those things. Now, those reasons definitely were fuel to the fire of the dumpster parade that was the James Charles hate train. But if we're going to talk about cancellation, we're going to have to talk about that thing that I've been wanting to not talk about for as long as I can remember. This is not going to be fun.
Like me, LA, Miami.
Fun fact, I was not looking forward to this section, but recently I actually found something that helped me change my perspective on cancel culture as a concept. So Liam McAvoy made some really great videos about the doings of his set and rich tattooed agitator that I don't need to specify. But he explained something that really resonated with me, and I feel like it's kind of brought me to this whole other conclusion. The idea is that there are two types of cancel culture. Not just one. The real one, let's call it that has actual positive intentions, and the other one, the superficial one, where people jump on bandwagons and just do it for the drama. However, and yes, I am going to talk about this next point, there's also an equal amount of people that will use cancel culture as an excuse to justify just about anything that their faves do, and not hold them accountable for just about any sort of thing in the world. People use cancel culture to deflect from actual criticism, which makes it an even more infuriating topic than it already is. In fact, it's actually the main ingredient of the infuriation. Any form of legitimate criticism results in the reaction of, can't you just let people grow? Everyone makes mistakes. Cancel culture is so toxic. And it's like, yeah, but we've been trying to let these people grow. We understand that people make mistakes, but some people just don't want to be held accountable for their actions. And yeah, sometimes you need to be held accountable for your actions when it's a big deal of a thing. Patterns of behaviour are real, and occasionally, very occasionally, some people are past the point of redemption. But yes, there is an actual cancel culture, and I am going to talk about it. I'm sure that some people had genuinely positive intentions when trying to take down James Charles. But, like many things, this idea of two cancel cultures might be something that's a little too split down the middle to represent reality. I've said it once, and I'm going to say it again. Binaries are bullshit. Put that on a t-shirt. So let's look at cancel culture as a spectrum instead. I'm basically the master of the spectrum, considering I'm on the autistic spectrum, the sexuality spectrum, and I'm also figuring out how the hell I fit in the gender spectrum. So I'm basically an expert on these things, just trust me. One end, positively intended social justice and activism. The other end, jumping on a bandwagon and sending death threats. It's a broad spectrum, I'll give it that. Now, I never went to the extent of some people when cancelling James Charles. I personally believe, this might be a bit of a niche belief, but I personally believe that no one deserves death threats. Wow, what a concept. Not even to the people I really hate on this platform. Like, no one deserves death threats. That's just something you don't do, because sending death threats online makes you a piece of shit. Arguably a bigger piece of shit than the person you're sending the death threats to. I'm hoping I don't have to explain that logic any further. That being said, even if you're not sending out death threats and stuff, it's very easy to jump from one end of the cancel culture spectrum to the other end. That's a lot easier than you think it is. Positively intended social justice can be part of the reason, but it can also be reactionary, and not always with the most reliable reasons. And sometimes passionate social justice can end up becoming passionately telling someone they're a shame on the LGBT community. And yeah, you can justify it if you want to by saying it's for the greater good, but often when these judgments and these statements are based on not the most reliable sources and bad faith criticisms, many of which come with a nice little side dish of bias. When those things aren't based on fact, it can take a dangerous turn. So instead of using commentary to create insightful dialogue, it's just adding to the flame war. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you intended when the end result is a big influencer contemplating suicide. Like, that's just a horrible way for anything to turn out, no matter how you intended it. So in this vein, I admit that I did contribute to cancel culture. Did I mean it? No. Does my intention really matter at all? Also no, because it contributed to this really dangerous hate train that could have ended up in something much worse. And if much worse had happened, I probably wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Like me, LA, you can get a taste. Miami, you can get a taste.
So in last year's video, I explained the seeds of Sistergeddon, and I'm gonna assume that if you're watching this, you knew how it kind of started, and all the origin story, so I won't bore you with all of that. But once Tati uploaded By Sister, media was set alight. The coverage of this scandal was unmatched, and I think the closest we've got recently is the meteoric downfall of Shane Dawson in the latest production from 21st Century Tati, which is a little video called Breaking My Silence. And that's why I start with my main point of how it got so meteoric. Because this drama was inescapable on YouTube. The reason it was so big at the time was because it was the big thing that everyone was talking about. It was a big scandal involving the biggest people on beauty YouTube with big repercussions. So yeah, of course this was going to be a big deal, and that's what kind of sent it shooting to the top. But my question is, what kept it at the top? I've narrowed it down to 4 things. The 4 horsemen of the Sistapocalypse, if you will. The first one is memeability. This is the fun one of the group. So to understand the boom of this scandal, you kind of have to understand memes and the way they work, particularly their impact on a story. If a story is just in the news, it's in the news. And not everyone's gonna wanna go read the news. Same if it's just on 1 or 2 channels. But if a story gets memed and funny content is created around it, it gets amplified to more people online, particularly younger people who can get educated about a scandal from memes. No, it's not always the most accurate education, but it's education, I guess. And yes, as ridiculous as it sounds, memes do contribute to a little bit of education in society, and that's kind of internet culture nowadays. I know it sounds strange, but I do think it was a big part of the impact of this being such a big scandal. Reason 2, the bandwagon. Popular thing is popular. Popular thing is covered by big people. More people notice because bigger people have made something more popular. Popular thing continues to be more popular. And especially with smaller channels, there was a real pressure to talk about it because it was, again, the big thing that was going on in a community so close. There was a pressure to talk about it, elaborate on your feelings, make a video about it. Lots of channels made videos about it. I made a video about it. Because when a scandal like this is so present, you kind of want to talk about it and you want to be in on everything that's happening. And the level of education and knowledge and nuance, it varies across channels. Not everyone has the same accounts. There's a lot of variation between channels, accounts, people sharing their opinions in comments. They get their information from a lot of different sources. Not all of them reputable. Some channels jump at straws. Some channels exaggerate. Some channels leap at bad faith criticisms and take it like the fact. Some people will take any sort of quote out of context. And often they'll just echo the thoughts of other channels, albeit maybe with a little touch of variation, and then that just kind of spreads around. And those channels that they got the thoughts from might not be in good knowledge themselves. This spreads, and this kind of talking about serious issue becomes a big trend. And when it's a big trend, not everyone's going to do it right. Reason number 3, yep, we're going to talk about stans. This scandal surprisingly seemed to prove that James Charles stans weren't this, like, united force in the way that a lot of other stan groups are. I don't know if my time on the internet just made me kind of familiar with certain stan groups and less with others, but the amount of subscribers that bolted from his channel after the whole bi-sister shenanigans, it's kind of a sign that it wasn't the most united force of sisterhood. Surprisingly, I actually think that Tati's fans were more of like a stronger core at that time. I say at the time, during and before, not necessarily so much after. Tati was a relatively trusted channel, what with her 5 days a week upload schedule and her somewhat exalted status as a beauty channel that was reliable. And yes, the Jeffree Star collaboration did taint her reputation, as did the vitamins, but she still had a good core audience. And yep, I am gonna go back to the Demon Man himself that Tati had been collaborating with, Jeffree Star, and his legions of terrifying stans. His stans are incredibly influential and incredibly terrifying. And when he put his finger in the drama, yeah, James Charles didn't stand a chance against that. I don't know if we'd be honest with that. And that's because Jeffree's fans have stood by him through scandal after 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 scandal, and so on and so forth. And all of that energy that could have gone into maybe holding their fave accountable instead went into the takedown of one of Jeffree Star's biggest competitors. Oh, but also, who's been linked heavily with the Demon Man? Oh yeah, Shane Dawson. He also has a lot of stans. Had? Interesting. At that time had a lot of stans that, again, would have really stood by him through scandal after redeeming a racist, after redeeming another racist, after redeeming trash person, after redeeming another trash person. And that's in part because he's cultivated this image as the soft boy grandpa of YouTube that's kind of this innocent cinnamon roll. And that garnered him a lot of sympathy despite, you know, the blackface and the blackface. I'm gonna say it twice because it happened a lot. And that means with these two particular figures, Jeffree and Shane, the connection between Star and Stan is incredibly close and tight. And these stans would do anything to defend their iconic unproblematic fave. That stands for you. Now we're gonna get serious. The last reason, you'll never guess, it's homophobia.
Well, hi there.
Welcome to the stage. So, Tati Westbrook played on homophobic stereotypes to get James Charles cancelled. I'm not saying she's going out and burning any rainbow flags, that's not what I'm implying. But she did take advantage of certain tropes to vilify James Charles and make him look like a predator. Now, the stereotype of gay men as predators and the whole concept of a gay panic, it's something that has a lot of charge behind it. Even though la-di-da, lovely progressive society, everyone's happy, pride, that's still something that kind of hums in the background. That didn't go away. So she and the people behind the scenes capitalised on that in order to kind of stack up the odds against James Charles, to make this innocent gay man look like a danger to society. And it did happen to stick with a lot of people who were intimidated by this trope. However, I'm also going to state another reason. Part of me feels like the takedown of one of the biggest beauty boys, if not the biggest beauty boy, kind of fueled by people's frustration against the trend of the glass escalator. Now, glass escalator is a very valid concept, and I actually think a very true concept. It warrants its own discussion. Other people have done really great videos on that. That is not my job. But it's very easy to take all of that frustration against these mediocre beauty boys who were less talented than their more accomplished, more talented female counterparts, and push that all against the one that started it all, so to speak. Again, that doesn't necessarily make you a member of the Westboro Baptist Church, but it is important that we look at these little biases and how they contribute to something like a boycott, a cancellation. Those little things can still be important.
You like me? LA, you can get a taste. Miami, you can get a taste.
So in this next section, I want to take some of these ideas that led to the formation and the prevalence of Dramageddon 2 and see if I can apply some of them to Dramageddon 1 and see if maybe we can explain some of that as well. Who knows, we're already analysing one scandal, let's get in on bits and pieces of another too. It's also important to recognise the common factors behind these scandals, because if you don't recognise these factors, then you might be doomed to repeat those factors or be a victim of those factors. I don't know, I shouldn't mix my metaphors. So, let's start with Laura Lee. She got cancelled because of racist tweets. She stayed cancelled because of that reaction video. That apology video was the thing that kept her in the cancellation zone. Yes, the racist tweets were really bad, but chances are they would have probably blown over because a lot of white people don't care about racism. But it was incredibly easy to end Laura Lee's career because of that cringy apology video. Yes, it was funny. Yes, it created a lot of meme-worthy moments. But the memeability of that video, like with James Charles and the whole cringe compilation, it made her a prime target of not only cancel culture, but cringe culture. Double the culture, and her career has not recovered since. Next up, we're going to talk about Manny, and we're going to talk about how he was cancelled for being a social climber, which is a very weird reason for someone to be cancelled, and I'm glad we're all acknowledging that. But he was also very closely associated with Laura Lee, and he also had a recent friendship derailment from Daddy Demon, and I think eventually people did turn around to this and realise how asinine that was. In the same way that a lot of people are doing that with James Charles nowadays, and kind of seeing the accounts and from Tatty and being like, that doesn't really add up. People did the same thing with Manny, and I'm ultimately glad of that. I think that Manny's making a much better contribution to the beauty community, and I think he's really turned things around. Also, his brand, Luna Beauty, there's been exponential improvement in that brand, and I think that the work and the vision and the effort is really showing, and I think that that's contributing to his kind of redemption and kind of slowly rising back up in the beauty community. Good for him. So the idea of the Irrelevant Four, you remember the Irrelevant Four when everyone was trying to make that happen? Yeah, that idea has itself become rather irrelevant, which is novel. I haven't heard so much as a peep from Gabriel Zamora in a long time. Don't know what he's doing. Does he do beauty YouTube? Is he working at McDonald's now? Who knows? We may never know. And then Nikita Dragun has been in her own lane of building her brand, appropriating black hairstyles, tanning to the point of actual blackface, and overall just creating and inciting more black outrage for the reason of I can't do anything else to get publicity. But as far as their impact of the drama on their careers, there isn't really anything to say about that. However, there is a common factor in both of these scandals. A common figure in both of these scandals. It's not Tatty. It's not James Charles. It's not even Shane Dawson. It is, yeah, the demon of demons, Mr. Jeffree Star. Because it was cool to like Pink Palpatine and kind of see him as this fun, like, interesting character, it wasn't cool to cancel him. So people didn't. He was also in control of a lot of these scandals, which made him pretty much like the Teflon of the beauty community. See, Jeffree didn't position himself in a stereotypical way in the same way as James Charles did. Jeffree positioned himself as the Regina George, Chanel Oberlin kind of character, someone that's witty and acerbic and like snaps back and claps back and whatnot. That kind of character. All I'm gonna say, that archetype is a lot more fun in fiction than in real life. In fiction, having Emma Roberts play this kind of character is something that's enjoyable. It's something that is fun, you can get memes out of it, you can create GIFs out of it, you can share quotes with your friends, it's fun to kind of look at it and kind of mock and kind of admire. But in real life, it has a very different effect. It creates this culture of toxicity and this negativity, and actually a lot of fear within what's supposedly a friendly beauty community. And because the memes and the bandwagons weren't going against him, they were going in his favour, he never really had to be held accountable for any of his actions. And that's because it wasn't trendy to do so. And again, sometimes people just cancel people for the trend because that's what they do. And also, a lot of those people also don't care about racism. What a surprise. Now that the tables have recently been turned, it has become a bit more trendy to denounce the Gucci Grim Reaper and his pedo bestie. Which, honestly, we love to see it.
Like me, LA, Miami,
So I'm going to be honest with you, this video has actually been in quite a bit of development since I decided I needed to do this little penance run. And originally I was going to do a more detailed Where Are They Now segment about the major players in this whole thing. But since everything's moving way too fast, that's probably not going to be a good idea because it'll probably be out of date by the time it gets uploaded. So yeah, we're just gonna do a brief rundown instead. So James Charles has really recovered and he's doing much better nowadays. Away from the drama, where he belongs. I think he should probably stay there because he's doing really well in that little corner. Despite his mistakes, he's still kicking, he's still doing talented looks himself, creating content, collaborating with celebrities, and he's even got his own YouTube original show. Which I don't know how much of an achievement that is, but like, he's doing good. We have the monumental downfall of Shane Dawson. Wow. I did not expect that to happen. I think that we do need to be holding people accountable for incredibly bad behaviour. I'm not even going to say problematic, I'm just going to say bad. The weird pedophilia stuff, the racism, slurs being used constantly, the blackface. I watched one of the compilations and I was just in horror at the amount of blackface. Yeah, that downfall was a long time in the making and I'm glad it's happened. So now we're going to move on to Tati, who has definitely reduced her output of content. Her beauty brand's actually gone pretty silent as well. Like, there hasn't really been any talk about what's going on with the Tati beauty, the Halo beauty. But the release of the Breaking My Silence video has seen her once again take the narrative in her favour. This time for the greater good instead of the greater evil. Speaking of which, Jeff Rice the star. Let's talk about him for one last time. Promise this is going to be the last time. I have noticed a real tide of people who used to support him and used to buy all his products and used to like really be behind him starting to step away from him and not support him anymore. That is a tide that I'm really happy to see because it's showing like a change in the beauty community away from this nastiness, this confrontationalness, that's not a word, and turning away from that, and that's something I'm really happy to see. One thing I'm really happy to see is Morphe dropping him. I'm sorry, if you follow me on Instagram, you know I was throwing a whole party when that happened, but Morphe dropping him is a big positive. Even though, bear in mind, Morphe is still Morphe, they still have problems. But I think a positive sign is a positive sign, and I'm going to take it as one. And that's like Miss Dungley. So I feel like a better conclusion of this video would be to talk about lessons we've learned. So I'm going to talk about the lessons that I have learned from Sistergeddon, Dramageddon 3, and all of the other stuff. 1. Focus more on responding to patterns of behaviour than one-off incidents. If you notice something that is a constant pattern of behaviour, maybe it's something that should have more weight put behind it than one big scandal that's like big and singular. Don't get me wrong, sometimes those aren't reliable either. I'd say it's just really consider how patterns of behaviour work and just remember that in the back of your mind every time you see a scandal. Once as an instance and twice as a hobby. 2. Analyse your sources. I don't know if this is the GCSE history coming out in me, but I think we need to do a little refresher course on analysing sources. Don't take anyone's word as fact, because bias and affiliation is a real thing. It can contribute to a skewed argument and can really shift talk into a different direction that might not be the way of truth. Number 3, jumping on bandwagons can be really fun short term, but ultimately it's just something so people can enjoy the drama of it and not to actually have meaningful conversations about holding people accountable. In fact, they actually do more negatives than positives. They give the beauty community a bad reputation, and also they can lead to people contemplating suicide, which is, to think that that could happen is absolutely horrifying. And lesson number 4, if you want to make a video on drama, maybe wait a few weeks. Or just don't. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy this. I know this is definitely a little bit of a different video of like analysis and kind of sitting on the periphery, but I feel like that's a really good place for me to sit right now, is kind of looking outside into something. I've definitely got some content in that vein that I'd really like to try out. So, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up if you can, which I'm assuming you can. If you really want to see more of me, then feel free to subscribe to my channel below. I give you permission to hit the bell if you want. You can hit the bell, you don't have to. But it does give consent. I asked it. If you have something to say about this video, or you want to talk to me more about it, you can leave a comment down below. I try my best to read my comments. Sometimes I forget. And if you really want to talk to me even more and see the stuff I talk about randomly, I'm on Twitter. And if you want to see some mediocre makeup looks on my face, then you can go onto my Instagram, where I also post my palette designs. Like this one. Maybe even this one. Or perhaps a little bit of this one, if you like. You know, jazz it up a little bit. So follow me there if you want to see all of that good stuff. Thanks again for watching this video. Remember, Black Lives Matter, wash your hands. If you're going outside, wear a mask. Over your nose and mouth. I am watching. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Love you for watching. Bye! Ooh.